Howdy everybody, David Minkin here, starting player with Connect More, and welcome to another video review of And Then We Held Hands. Now, before I even get started on this review, you'll see that what I have in front of me here is the game, but it is a print and play version of the game which I made from the files provided to me from the publisher themselves so that I could do this review for you. In fact, probably the day that I'm recording, or within the next couple of days here, it is August 2015, they will be kickstarting this game. So this is a special Kickstarter preview video that I'll be doing, and in fact I'm doing two separate videos for this. I'm going to be doing one in which is going to be my standard Avoid the Rules, which stands for a video of instruction and demonstration that helps ease rule understanding and learning. Easy start. That's going to be an overview style of the game, and I'm going to do a second video which will be just a straight run through. I'm going to do a raw run through. It'll be unrehearsed, unscripted, and I'm just going to go through that, and I'm going to assume that you already have a feeling of the rules, or you're going to pick them up as we go along. So whatever your preference is, we can stay tuned. This particular video here is going to be the overview video, or you can go and check out my run through video, whatever you want. Now at the end of both of those videos, I will have the exact same final thoughts. I'll just clip them onto both videos, so when you get onto there, my final thoughts won't change, obviously. So all of that out of the way, let's talk a little introduction about the game. And Then We Held Hands is a two-player cooperative game, and it's designed by David Cherkop and Yannick Masson. Hopefully I got their names right. And the reason why I say their names is Yannick is unknown to me. I don't really know too much about him. But David is, I know him through his Cardboard Castaway reviews, and he's always so full of energy, and he gets me enthused and energized with any review that he does. So it was with great anticipation that I wanted to play this game, because I saw his name as actually one of the designers, and watching his videos is just contagious, the enthusiasm that he has. So I highly recommend that you go check that out. Now this is a two-player cooperative game, and it's fairly unique in the fact that you cannot talk strategy with the other player that you're playing with, and so it's really quite neat that way. And the theme of this game just makes it ring. It's a wonderful, wonderful theme. In fact, everyone I play this game with, they cannot imagine the theme being any different for this type of game. So without any further ado, let's talk about all of these great things, and we'll walk through the Avoid the Rules, and then please join me at the end for my final thoughts. And if you like this video, please come find me on Facebook or YouTube, Connect More Board Games. I hope to see you there. So here we have And Then We Held Hands. Now again, like any Kickstarter preview video that I do, I always like to remind you, the viewer, that what you're looking at here right now is a print and play copy of the game that I made with files provided to me by the publisher. So what you see is going to give you a fairly good representation of what the graphics and the layout is going to look like, but in terms of the little bits here that you see on the board and the actual component quality, well, that is yet to be determined. But this is another game coming from Ludi Creations, and I've always been quite satisfied with the component quality that they provide all their games come with, so I'm sure that it's going to be top notch. So with that disclaimer out of the way, let's talk about this game. And Then We Held Hands is a two-player cooperative game, and as you can tell just by looking here at the main board, it is an abstract game. But I need to stress, and I need to talk about the theme of this game before I continue, because I cannot talk about this game without integrating the theme into the discussion, because the theme is so well integrated and immersive, and so well captures all of the different mechanics and ideas and things you need to do within this game, that every time I play it, we end up telling a story. We end up telling the story that the theme wants us to tell. And in doing so, it also promotes a lot of discussion amongst the person I'm playing with. Is generally been my wife with this particular game. It generally promotes discussion outside of this game, and I love it when a game does that. So let's take a second and just talk about this theme. In this game, each player represents an individual within a failing and struggling relationship. In fact, you are at such a dark spot in your relationship right now, you can't even find a way to effectively communicate with each other anymore. You don't even know how to talk about your feelings. And that is brought into the game by the fact that during the gameplay, you are not allowed to discuss strategy, possible tips, or anything that might benefit the other player in terms of figuring out the actual strategy or gameplay. You're not allowed to discuss that. And that's representative of the theme. You want this person just to do something, but you have no idea how to communicate it or maybe even what it is that they want them to do. So you are allowed to talk about anything else you want while playing this game, anything you can imagine, but you cannot, under any circumstances, actually discuss the strategy. You are relying on your partner to be perceptive of what's going on, your feelings, your emotions, what you're feeling inside, and what it is that you're struggling with. You're relying on your partner to perceive that, and on their turn to be able to assist you and help you through what you're feeling. And in doing so, both of you can help each other, and by helping each other, you end up ultimately helping yourselves. Woo! Yes, so this might not be the game that you might play with your buddy. I tried playing this with a guy at work, got a funny look. He's like, Dave, this is just your way of trying to hold hands with me. Let's do something different. With that, keep that in mind. But with my wife, it's really promoted a lot of great discussion. And even with, if you're playing with your buddies, it also has been providing great discussion, has been good for a laugh. But getting back to the theme, we're talking about these emotions, these feelings. Well, you'll see that each one of these nodes here on the board is represented by one of 4 colors. These 4 colors represent the emotions that these players are feeling. Now, the blue and the green colors represent more positive emotions. The blue is calm and the green is happy. And you'll notice that the blue and the green are down here on what's referred to as the balance scale, and both of the players are going to start on level 0, but you can also be in a positive balance up to 1 or 2, and that's if you're on the red or the green side of the spectrum, or pardon me, the blue or the green side of the spectrum. But here on the negative side of the spectrum, we have the negative emotions. We have sad, which is represented by the dark blue or the black, and we have angry. And so again, these are on the negative side of this balance scale. I'm going to explain what that means, because you'll see that all of those 4 colors are here on the board, and those 4 colors are also the colors you're going to see here on the cards that I've laid out for each of the players. And in fact, these cards are referred to as emotion cards, and this is the emotion deck here. And I just need to take a minute to show you these cards. The artwork on these cards is gorgeous. I just love it. It's simple, it's clean, it's representative of how some of the emotions that you might be feeling throughout the game. Like here you got resigned, and you got this guy, and he looks like he's in prison here, and the door's open, he's letting you go. You can go, you're free. He's like, what difference does it make? It just doesn't make any difference if that door is open or closed. I'm trapped anyhow. So like, it's just really rich. But that being said, these pictures and these words here on the cards have no effect whatsoever on the gameplay. They are simply there again to help you with the narrative, help you with the theme, and to help you kind of discuss what you're doing throughout the game. What matters on these cards are the bars on the left and on the right side of the card. And again, each of these bars is going to represent these different emotions throughout the course of the game. In fact, these bars are what you're going to use in order to move this second piece of yours around the board. So you will need to play from your deck of cards, or from your hand of cards, corresponding colors to be able to move your piece onto that node. So for example, red wants to move to this dark blue. I would have to play a card of dark blue that's showing here from the side, and I'd be able to move, and I'd get rid of my card. Now there's a couple really cool things to consider when doing this. The first thing is on your turn, you are allowed to use your partner's cards as well. So that's another reason why I put these 2 hands of cards fairly close to each other. So when it's on your turn, you can see if you can actually tap into your partner's emotions. emotions. You can use them as kind of one of those feelings sometimes when you need your partner to pull you up when you're down. Well, then you can actually tap into their emotions, into their emotional bank, and they can support you through times when you actually need to move. So why are you moving? What's the point of moving here? Are we just going to move around willy-nilly? Well, no. You'll see that in fact there are 3 rings that go around this board. We've got an outer, middle, and inner, and they represent 3 rounds that you and your partner are going to be playing, and each round you have to actually complete 8 objectives. Now these objectives here there's a deck of 24 cards, and I've just shuffled them into 3 piles of 8, 1 pile for each round. And so what you simply do is at the beginning of the game you flip over one of these cards. Now these objective cards are always going to represent one of the emotions on the board. So this particular one, we got calm, and so we need to work through our emotions, and one of us needs to become calm before we can continue on this emotional journey together. So here we see that we have calm when we place that out. So what we're going to do is on our turn, one of us will try to finish our turn on this objective card. So say, for example, red needs to move first. He will move 1 by discarding a blue card there, and then move another one by discarding, say, for example, another blue card or lighter blue card, and by ending his turn, he has achieved this objective. And then we'd flip over the next objective card and continue to work our way through that. Now, since there are 3 rounds, the astute observer will notice that there's 3 rings with nodes on them. So for the first round, you can only move on the outer ring, and you can only achieve objectives on the outer ring. Once you progress to the second deck, you get to move on both the middle ring and the outer ring, but you may only achieve the objectives in this middle ring. Once you get to the third round, you can only achieve the objectives on the inner ring, but you are free to move anywhere you want now on the board. Now, once you have worked through all 24 objectives, 8 objectives for each round, then, and only then, if you have not yet died, both players on consecutive turns must enter into this inner ring with their balance at 0 after they enter. And if they do that one turn after the next, well, then they have overcome, they have discussed all of the emotions, they've gone through this emotional journey together, and they are now ready. They are bigger and stronger than ever, and they've probably found a way to even hyphenate their names together, like Bennifer and or the next power couple. They have overcome all. So I talk about this balance chart here, and the fact that you need to be 0 at the end of the game in order to win. So what does that mean? Well, not only do you use these cards to be able to move from node to node, but every time you move to a node, you have to shift your balance, your emotional balance, one way or the other. So for example, here we got red. He wants to move through blue. So for example, he might take this card here, and that would be the dark blue, so he moves that, and so he's going to discard that, and then he wants to go to blue, and so then he goes, okay, I'll take this card as well, and then he goes to blue. In doing so, for playing this card here first, he moved his balance 1 to the negative side because he had to work through some sadness first. He had to go through this sadness. He's feeling a little bit sad, but then he eventually got back to the calm by playing the second card, and that moves his balance back because you move in the direction of the positive emotions right here. Now this is extremely, extremely important because this represents your emotional state. So although he worked through some sadness, he was able to get back and calm himself. And in doing so, he has maintained his balance. And only if you have 0 balance at the end of the turn are you allowed to actually add more cards to your hand. Had he stayed on one side or the next, he would be stuck with whatever cards he has left in his playing area. But in fact, he gets to go, he's like, woohoo, I'm back at 0 balance. I have 4 cards, so I draw back up to 6. So then, which is your hand limit. So he puts his 2 cards and he just shuffles them in from the side. But here's another really cool thing, is you'll see again that again these cards have bars on both sides, and I've chosen to cover up this right side because this also represents the perspective that you have on a particular problem. If you are on this side of the board or on the left side of the board, you must show the left sides of the cards. Those are the emotions that are available for you to choose. If, however, you're on the right side of the board, then you simply would take your cards and you flan them out the other way. Like, it's awesome. I love this ability, because once you flan them out the other way, you flip this over. I always put the dot showing the cards that I'm showing. You have a whole new perspective. You are viewing your problems, you're viewing your relationship from a different point of view now, and in doing so, you have different emotions, you have different feelings about that, and as your perspective changes, then it may provide opportunities or different options for your partner as well, for you guys to work through things. Should you be on this center line right here, then you get to choose the perspective, and you are free to look at any one of these cards at the different sides of the bars and see what types of emotions you might need to continue progressing towards the end game. So I think that is such a clever mechanic, and again, it integrates so well with this ability that you can't talk, because sometimes you see that if your partner might be stuck, and that's another way you can lose. If your partner is stuck in some nodes and you see that, say for example, white's here, and there really isn't any red or blue available for white to move, if white cannot move at the beginning of their turn, you lose. You lose. So sometimes you need to try as their partner, going, my partner's really stuck here between some anger and some sadness here, and they're struggling. You know, they're calm, but they can't get out of it. They're stuck between these emotions, and you might have to go and change your perspective so that you might be able to provide some opportunities for your partner to be able to actually get out of that jam. And you can't talk about it. You can't, they're so stuck they can't talk about it, and it just makes for just a beautiful puzzle. And what's really cool about this game is you'll see how the actual rounds are set up. In the first round there are a ton of nodes, so to get to any one emotion, it's going to burn up a lot of other emotions because you don't know how to express yourself. You go through from highs to lows, from mountaintops to valley lows, and you just don't know how to express yourself, and it's going to be emotionally burdensome. It's going to be a struggle for you. Whereas as you continue throughout the course of the game, you'll see that these nodes start becoming closer and closer together, and that represents the stage that you're at in the emotional journey. It's easier now for you to be able to express your emotions and get to the emotional state that you want to be in. Now, the one thing I should also mention that is extremely important about when you're moving, whenever you take these cards, either from your area or from your partner's area, it doesn't matter where they come from. Whoever's turn it is, you take the cards that you took to move and you discard them here beside your hand here. And each player will keep their own individual discard pile, because once all of the 8 objectives for that round are over, then you get to choose which one of the discard piles you want to reshuffle back into the emotion card deck. So generally you would just choose the larger one to give you more options, because the other way you can lose this game is should there be no cards left in the emotion deck and no cards left in the actual playing area, well then you lose because you've run out of options. You have no emotional cards to play. Now, the discard pile that is not reshuffled into the deck actually stays where it is. And so then generally what I find in the games that I play is you kind of swap. Whoever does it the first time, then the opposite player will do the second time, because they've still got some cards built up from them from the previous round. Now, the only time that you do not reshuffle these cards into the main deck is once you've completed the 3rd round. Once you've completed all the objectives here on the inner node, you do not reshuffle any discard piles back into the deck. You must make do with what you have and hope that you still have enough emotions so that you might be able to go and meet your partner into the middle ring. Now, it's also important to notice that suppose you are at that state in the game, is you have to always enter that middle ring with an emotional imbalance, because by moving into this inner ring you can discard any card that you want, but you still have to change the balance scale as you normally would. So what you'd want to do is, say for example green was here or red was here and he was in the -1, he would have to discard a blue or a green upon entering so that his balance would go back up to 0. And then similarly, white would also have to be imbalanced previous to his turn, so that the card that he discards would be enough to get him back to balance. And at that point in time, you hold hands and you share your victory, and you rejoice in the fact that you have recovered and you have saved your relationship. Now, if this wasn't enough to grab your attention and to keep you engaged for many plays, well, they've also introduced what's referred to as the argument variant. So if you look at some of these objective cards, you'll see that on the front side of them, some of them have these different level bars on them. Some of them will have a bar that goes all the way to the top, another one 2/3 of the way, and other ones that are only 1/3 of the way. Now, these represent arguments that are going to occur throughout the course of the game. And when you play this variant, you also get to choose your level of difficulty. If you only want to play on the easy level with this variant, well then you'd only be interested in the cards that only show this bar that only goes 1/3 of the way up the card. If you want to increase the difficulty a little bit, well then you'd only be interested in these two cards, both the 1/3 of the way up and the one that goes 2/3 of the way up the bar. And if you want impossible, then you'd always play the special rules associated with these bars, regardless of which ones you see. So then you get to actually start tailoring the actual difficulty of this game for your liking. So what exactly does this mean? Well, when you flip over one of these cards, so again, suppose you actually had your objective deck like so, and you flip over a card, you see, oh, I need to get to the green spot, but it's also an argument. And that means not only does one player actually have to get to this spot, both players must get to the identical node. So this is really interesting, and the reason why it makes it much more difficult, if we put the pieces back in their starting position, suppose you get this as the first card in the game, both players must meet at some green node on the outer ring. And so you can see what's really cool about this as well is earlier in the game when you draw arguments, to move your pieces to go and actually be on the same node as each other is going to take a ton of work to do that. And that's really representative again of this theme, because when you get arguments later on in the process and you'll be on the inner ring for these arguments, well, they'll be a lot easier to come and meet each other. There's less emotions to go through because you're further along in your journey, you're more mature as a couple now, and you can handle these levels of arguments better. So when you see this, then you need to discard your cards and move in the normal way, but you need to move these pieces so that they can come and eventually they will actually be on the exact same node as each other. Once that has been achieved, then this objective has been achieved. So woo! These arguments add a whole level of difficulty. So again, that's why when you choose your level of difficulty, you can choose just to play with the cards that only show up with this smaller bar, middle bar, or all three of these bars, because obviously with all three of these bars there's going to be more arguments to resolve, whereas when you're only playing with the smaller bars, well then you can ignore these bigger bars when they show up and resolve them as normal. So it really adds an interesting twist. The other cool thing about that is this is the only time in which when you see that these pieces are actually on the same node, you're not allowed to be on the same node as any of the other pieces, and you're not allowed to move through the other player's piece either. The other player acts as a wall or as a buttress against you, and again that fits really well into the theme. However, for the argument variant, you are allowed to travel through on your next turn, and in essence travel through the other individual and go through them that way. That's the only time you can do that. Normally when you are moving, if you run up to the next person and you're on an adjacent node, you cannot pass through that person's piece. You must go back the other way. So that's the argument variant, and that's another way just to dabble a little hot sauce and sprinkle a little mix here into the relationship. And again, I think it is just an excellent way to actually beef up your variability and also the difficulty of this game. Alright, well welcome back. I hope you enjoyed whatever video you watched, whether it be the actual run through or the actual Avoid the Rules overview. And I hope that these videos have given you a very strong sense of what this game is about and whether or not this game is going to be right for you and the partner that you have in mind to play this game with. Because after all, for any Kickstarter preview video that I do, that is my goal, that is my intention. There are a lot of games out there, especially ones on Kickstarter. Is this a game that you want to invest money in? So let's talk about all the decision points that you may make when deciding to whether or not you want to buy a game or not buy a game. So the first thing obviously here is when you see a game that's about relationships and it's a two-player game, immediately when I saw this, I'm like, woohoo, this is a game for me and my spouse. This is a game for my partner. This is a game that is about relationships. Fantastic. And for some, and I'm lucky, I'm very fortunate in the fact that my spouse, she loves playing games with me. We play a lot of games together, and I'm very fortunate. But other of you out there watching might go, wow, this might be the game that I'm going to do to hook my significant other and get them into gaming, or be something that might interest them. Because after all, it's the theme that's grabbing you. Well, let's think about this for a second, shall we? This is a game, okay, it's about relationships and working through struggles, but it's a game where you represent a couple that is at rock bottom, that's completely at wit's end, and they can't even communicate properly to each other. They can't even talk, which is again brought through in the game, the actual fact that you can't even talk through the puzzle. So how is this conversation going to go with your significant other or your partners? Go, hey honey, I kick-started a brand new game today. It's going to be perfect for us. I can't wait to play for it. Oh yeah? So what's that game going to be about? Well, it's a game about a struggling and failing relationship, and one that's so bad they can't even talk to each other. Oh, so you thought of me, did you, when you bought this game? I see. And yeah, so it might not be the best approach for that. Like if that theme's kind of drawing you in, you might need to kind of be delicate as to how you actually approach that. But it does, the theme is just dripping. And I'm surprised I'm saying that. Like I'm surprised that I'm talking about theme so much for an abstract game, because ultimately you could take this away and it's just colors. It's just colors and nodes, and that's all you're trying to do is move from color to color and finally meet here in the inner ring. That's the root of the game. But I behoove you, I challenge you, any of you out there, to find any mechanic that's integrated in this game, any decision, any element of the actual game, any part of the gameplay that cannot be tied, intricately tied, seamlessly tied into this theme. I challenge you to do that. I can't do that. Every single thing that I do on this game, I tie back into the theme, and in doing so, it just unfolds and creates just this story, and it's a beautiful story. And if I could actually sum up this entire game in one word, both in terms of theme, the way it looks, the gameplay, I would have to say it's a beautiful game. It is just absolutely a beautiful game. And when you talk about this theme, it's this beautiful storyline that you are taking a couple and you are making them whole again. You're taking two individuals who are ready to walk and go their separate way and remain individuals until they find somebody else, and you're bringing them back together. And in doing so, you're bringing them closer together here on the board. You're moving in these rings, and each ring gets easier, or they're able to move quicker to each other to resolve arguments. It's just beautiful. The story is beautiful, and in speaking of beautiful, the artwork is fantastic. It just fits perfectly. I cannot think of different artwork that would match so well. And the thing that's really cool about this, yeah, if this was just a basic abstract game, which it is, but if they weren't concerned about tying in this theme, you don't even need these pictures. These pictures and these descriptors as to what you're feeling. For example, this one here is betrayed. You have anger and sadness here on the same card, and you're feeling betrayed. And so that's a more of a complex emotion with these two emotions together here. But this betrayed emotion does nothing. As for the actual gameplay, it does zero. But to integrate into this theme that allows you to tell the story, you can, when you get there, like, oh, you know, I'm sad and I feel betrayed, and it helps you, it helps with the narrative of the game. And I think I love it when games do this, and I love it when games encourage you to actually tell the story. Another game that I absolutely love is Testament, or Legacy, the Testament of Duke de Krejci. Another one where you're building these family trees, and then you start telling stories about who's marrying who, and the births and complications and everything else like that. And you get wrapped up in this little world. I get wrapped up in this couple's world because of the way that they've integrated this theme with the mechanics. So enough about that. You can tell that I love it. And theme is not the only thing here. I promise you that if a theme is really good or really original, which this particular game is, it will get me to play the game at least once. Theme draws me in every time. Or it repels me every time. If it's zombies, I have zero interest in playing. I don't care how good the game is. However, for me to come back and play the game a second time, there needs to be a core game, there needs to be interesting mechanics, there needs to be interesting gameplay for me to want to come back and to hook me that second time. Now, for me to get to play a game multiple times over and over and over again, there needs to be just a perfect marriage between the theme and the gameplay and the mechanics, and that's what will hook me and have a game that I want to play over and over and over again. So now that we've talked about theme, what about the gameplay? Because at the heart of this game, all it is a puzzle. That's all you're trying to do. You're trying to move these two pieces into the center piece. But the wrinkle is it's not just you doing this puzzle by yourself. You are relying on somebody else, you're alternating turns with them, and you're trying to solve this puzzle together. But what's really neat about it is you can't talk about what you're going to do. So for those of you out there that are maybe sometimes concerned about even like the alpha player in cooperative games, well, you don't have that here because nobody can talk. You can't have somebody ordering you around. So it's beautiful. It just removes that out of the way. And again, that's integrated back into the theme because you need to be perceptive of the other player and what they might be able to do on their turn or what they can't do on their turn. And so you need to prepare them for success on their turn so that they don't get stuck and so they'll be able to help continue moving towards the puzzle. And I think that's just so great because when you first sit down to play this game, the tendency is to only look at your two pieces because in a lot of games, obviously, you're looking at your pieces. And to solve this puzzle, you need to look at all four pieces. You need to look at your partner's balance. You need to look at where your partner is on the board, and then also consider your balance and where you are on the board and where your perspective is, and what cards your partner has and what cards you have. You need to consider all of these because you are trying to resolve this puzzle and set it up so that the next turn your partner will have a successful step and so on and so forth. And again, that comes back to the theme because you need to be perceptive. Anyhow, I'm gonna try to keep going back to the theme, but it's just, again, I can't talk about this game without integrating the theme. And so for that reason, I have to say is I really enjoy this game. It's very puzzly. My wife was the one I played this game with the most, and she did not like this game because she did not like the puzzle aspect of it. She thought the theme was okay, and but when she plays a game, she likes to build her own tableau, and she likes to be more focused on her own pieces. And if there's going to be interaction in a game, she wants it to be either indirect, either through blocking through worker placement, or direct in such a way that it benefits her while hurting me. And so in this particular game, it was a little too puzzly, and it didn't hook her. So even though the theme she found really interesting and wanted to play, then it was hard for her to come back and play because she didn't really like the puzzle aspect of it. And well, that's okay. So I just want to. The reason why I mention that is for those of you who are thinking, well, this is the perfect couples game. Well, no, because there's two sides. The theme will get you hooked, but again, it's the gameplay. If you have a partner or somebody who really enjoys these puzzly games, fantastic. This will be a perfect game, and it flies by really quick. It's a really nice, I wouldn't call it a filler. It could be, depending on some of the random elements that actually occur in the game. So let's talk about those. So of course, if you watched my playthrough video, you'll see that I was really hoping for some good cards sometimes, and I got them. I'm like, woohoo! And it was just awesome. And that's one thing I love about throwing the dice chucking, or sometimes even some of these card games, is that you're sometimes reliant on the luck of the draw, and this game is no different. But like any good game where you're relying on a dice roll, or you're relying on good cards being pulled, there has to be mitigation strategies for you to do that, for you to actually change things and hopefully work with what's given to you. And this game is no different. You have the ability to actually change your perspective, so you need to be able to work your piece such on the board so that you can give yourself that option. And by changing your perspective, it gives you that other choice of seeing what's on the other side of the cards when you just scan the cards from one side to the next, which is a great mechanic as well, because there's a little bit of memory involved with that as well, because you're not allowed to flip through and see, well, which one is better than the next. You have to kind of make that decision and live with it. So and even then, sometimes you can't remember, like, well, what are the emotions available to me on the other perspective? And you're like, oh, come on, big money. So you have that ability, and you also have the ability to just, in order to try to keep your hand full, you want to keep as many cards out here as possible without burning through this deck too quickly, because that's one of the losing conditions. But by keeping a full hand, then it gives you more options. You have more things to choose from both you and your partner. Once you start getting very depleted, well, then you really start getting in between a rock and a hard place. Your relationship is really up against it. So in order to do that, this mechanic of staying balanced, it's awesome, because it forces you to be patient sometimes. Because sometimes you really want to just go out and get this objective card, but you're like, no, and we need to take our time. You know, our relationship, we need to take our time and work our way through this. And that's just like a real, a struggling relationship. You just can't go from struggling to fixed in one session. No, you need to take your time. You need to have patience. You need to regrow with each other. And that's incorporated here with this balance mechanism. It's just awesome. And as the game goes on, then you can actually take longer ways. You can actually use the outer rings that you've already used to kind of work your way around to the nodes that you need to get to achieve objectives. It's going to take longer. You're going to work through some more emotions, but that's okay, because it's kind of like with any relationship. Sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards, and that's represented by how you can move sometimes. And then when you do that on the board, it invokes some more of this storytelling. So the mitigation that's available for you, very simple, very straightforward, integrated beautifully in with the theme, and is available on things that you are always needing to think about. But not just your mitigation. What about your partner? How are they going to handle their turn? So we're talking about random elements. That's the other random element which brings a real human factor to this game, is your partner's play. And this is great, because you don't know if your partner is seeing the puzzle, seeing the solution that you're seeing the same way that you are. And so you might have set them up, and then they do something that to you is completely random. Like, what the heck? But to them, it makes perfect sense. And again, this reminds me of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus book, because you're like, well, what did you do here? Could you not clearly see that this is what I was intending, that I was trying to move this direction? And meanwhile, they're thinking the same thing. Can't you clearly see this is what we need to do? But you can't talk about it. So it also provides for a really enriching conversation afterwards when you kind of replay some of the moves, which I always really enjoy doing that. So when you're doing this puzzle, and if your partner is not responding the way that you're expecting them to, well then that throws in another random element and you got to adapt to it. You need to figure out a way to either see things from your partner's point of view or get them to see things from your point of view, which again is representative of real relationships. So I think this game just does a awesome job of bringing all of this together. I really look forward to the final game, because as I mentioned, this again is a print and play, and I just need to remind you of that once more. Although the artwork here, and I've talked about it before, gorgeous, perfect, that's representative of what the game is going to be like. But these pieces, I'm not sure, and the component quality, again, not sure. But it's Ludi Creations, so I'm not at all worried about what the component quality will be. And the other super cool and interesting thing that they've worked into this game is this argument mechanic, or this argument variant, I should say. I think it's just great because I love cooperative games that allow you to dial the tension to your preference or to your liking. And by adding in this argument variant, it does that. That being said, is sometimes I find, I've played this game enough times that I find that it's just going back to the random elements of the cards. Sometimes the cards are just unlucky, and no matter what, even if you got it on the easiest setting, you're like, well, you know, that didn't really work out and you're gone in the first round. But that's okay, because I haven't really committed a lot to the game at that point in time. This game plays quite quickly, and I don't mind that bit of, if things are just going bad for you with bad cards, well, it's just a bad day, and so be it. But any card game, you could have that criticism for it. But if that's something that you're absolutely totally against, well, perhaps that's a decision point for you. Another decision point for you, again, I keep talking about this in the game. We always talk about the couple in the game and the relationship, but when I'm playing, I get wrapped up into it. I like to talk about me and the person I'm playing with as being this couple. So obviously that works really well when it's your wife or your partner, your spouse, because you can kind of talk about these feelings and these emotions and have a good chuckle of it. But if this is a game that maybe you're taking the pub to play with play with the chaps, well, you know, you might get a few weird looks. And as mentioned in the video when I was introducing this to a new guy, he's like, so seriously, if this is just your long convoluted way for us to hold hands, I'll just tell you right now the answer is no. So if it's that group, that type of group, and they don't really buy into the theme so much, hopefully I've given you enough decision points as well for the actual gameplay, that it's just a really intricate, interesting puzzle. And sometimes it's not so much the puzzle that's here on the table, it's the puzzle as to what your partner is doing. Again, like, whoa, what's going on over there? And trying to react and respond in such a way that you can continue to work yourself towards achieving a victory together. So I've gone on and on about this game. I personally think it's a really great game. I like absolutely everything about it. There's not a single thing that I do not like about it. I think it's a unique, original theme that is so well integrated within an abstract game that I highly, highly recommend it. But don't take just my word for it. Go to the Kickstarter page. Check out the materials they have there. I'm sure that there's other video reviews up there, or written reviews. I'm not sure. I know Rahdo did a review on it a while ago. He's the king. Go check out his reviews. I know he's quite favorable on the game as well. So go check that out, and if you like this video or any of the anything that sparked a little bit of an idea in your head, please leave some comments or questions below, or come find me on Facebook or YouTube. Connect More Board Games. I would love to see you there. Until next time, happy gaming. Cheers.